The hum of the space station filled every corner of the bustling hangar. Ships docked and undocked in a steady rhythm, their engines leaving trails of faint blue light across the metal floor. Aliens of every shape and size hurried past, carrying tools, crates, or small devices, talking in languages the human mechanic barely understood. In the center of it all, a human named Jaren worked alone, or at least that's what everyone thought. A group of alien children hovered nearby, their green skin shimmering in the overhead lights. Their large eyes followed Jaren's every movement as he adjusted a ship's energy core. One of them, a tall one with antennae, laughed and nudged the others. "Humans say they have helpers," it said in a teasing voice. "Elves they call them. Elves aren't real. Do you really believe this?" The children giggled and floated closer, curious and skeptical. They had grown up on the station hearing humans talk of strange stories, old myths and legends from Earth. But elves? That sounded ridiculous. No species here had ever seen such a thing, and if it existed, surely scanners and sensors would have detected it long ago. Jaren hummed quietly to himself as he worked. His hands moved quickly and precisely, adjusting wires, tightening screws and setting panels into place. Yet, every so often, a tool would float into his hand or a panel would shift slightly before he could reach it. The alien children watched in silence, their laughter dying down into uneasy whispers. One child tilted its head. "Did you see that?" it whispered. "The wrench, it moved by itself." "Impossible," another said. "Humans are clever but they don't have magic." Jaren paused for a moment, listening. He never spoke to the children about the small beings who lived in the hangar vents, or the ones who helped him when no one was looking. These were not machines and they were not his servants. They were small, silent helpers, invisible to most, who moved only when kindness guided them. He had learned their ways long ago, respecting their freedom, never commanding them. In return, they assisted him quietly, making his work seem almost miraculous. A sudden alarm blared from a nearby docking bay. A minor power fluctuation had sent the lights flickering. The children squealed and pulled back slightly, startled. Jaren didn't flinch. Tools flew into his hands, panels slid into place, and within seconds the alarm ceased. The children stared in awe. Did he fix it alone?" one asked. A small shimmer of light flickered in the corner, so faint that a casual observer might not notice it. Tiny shapes darted between beams and pipes, their movements graceful and quick. Jaren glanced toward them with a quiet smile, but he said nothing. The children's eyes widened and some leaned closer, trying to catch another glimpse. "I told you," the tallest one muttered. "Elves aren't real." Yet even as it spoke, a small shadow zipped past its view, almost like a whisper of motion, and the child froze. Jaren continued his work, completely absorbed in the repairs. He didn't mind the children watching. They were harmless. Sometimes, young ones needed to see things they could not yet understand. The hangar was alive with sound, light, and movement, and the elves, if that's what the children insisted on calling them, moved carefully through the spaces too narrow for any adult or tool to reach. They cleaned, they organized, they nudged items into place. To the outside eye, everything appeared normal. But to a careful observer, something extraordinary was happening. The children whispered among themselves, pointing and leaning over the railing. "Maybe they are real," one said softly, eyes wide. I saw them." "Don't be silly," another replied. "There is always a logical reason. Humans are just clever." Jaren finished the repair and stepped back. The energy core hummed steadily, lights glowing warmly. The tools that had floated into place returned to the workbench. Nothing seemed amiss, yet the children remained silent, staring. For a moment the hangar felt still, as if holding its breath. Then one of the children spoke, barely louder than a whisper. "Maybe humans know more than we think. Maybe they do have elves." Jaren looked toward the group but said nothing. He picked up a small cloth and wiped his hands, the faint shimmer of light still playing at the edges of his vision. He knew the children would never see the helpers clearly, not yet. Patience and observation were required. Trust could not be forced. And the elves, real in ways the children could not yet understand, would remain hidden until the time was right. The children floated away slowly, their minds buzzing with questions they could not yet answer. Laughter and chatter returned to the hangar, but a small wonder lingered in their hearts. Jaren watched them go and let out a quiet chuckle, the kind that held both amusement and understanding. The hangar was full of life, of machines and beings of all sizes, but the smallest, unseen helpers were the ones who made the impossible possible. And somewhere in the shadows the elves moved, unseen but present, guiding and aiding, proving that even in a galaxy of science and technology, A little kindness could create what others would call magic. The hangar hummed with quiet energy as Jaren continued his work. Ships of all shapes rested in their docks, and the soft glow of lights reflected off metal surfaces. The alien children who had watched him yesterday lingered nearby, their curiosity growing. They whispered among themselves, still unsure what to make of the elves they thought they had glimpsed. Jaren moved carefully along the edge of a large cargo ship, adjusting panels that had shifted during the last docking. As he worked, small tools floated gently into his hands, as if carried by invisible fingers. The children leaned closer, peering through the gaps in the railings. Their eyes widened in surprise, but when they called out, nothing responded. The floating tools moved with precision, as though following instructions only Jaren could give. "Do you see that?" one child whispered, nudging another. "The wrench," it moved again. The other shook its head. "There must be some kind of hidden system. Humans are clever, remember? It has to be machines or drones." Jaren paused and looked around, noticing a faint shimmer in the corner of the hangar. Tiny lights flickered across pipes and vents, moving too quickly to belong to any human or known machine. He smiled quietly. These were his helpers, small beings who chose to remain hidden, guiding tools, lifting panels, and repairing delicate circuits that even he could not reach alone. They were not mechanical, they were alive, intelligent, and voluntary. The alien children watched in growing awe. They noticed footprints in the dust near the maintenance bays, too small and delicate to belong to any adult or child. A faint trail of light shimmered along a panel edge, disappearing before anyone could touch it. The children began to realize that what they had laughed at might not be a joke at all. A sudden alarm went off from the docking bay. One of the larger ships had reported a minor energy fluctuation, and lights flickered across the hangar. The children panicked, floating back to the railing. Jaren didn't move quickly. He moved calmly, trusting his helpers. Tools lifted, panels shifted, and wires rearranged themselves as the energy flow stabilized within seconds. The alarm silenced, leaving the children speechless. I don't understand," one whispered. "How did he fix it so fast? No one could do that alone." Jaren wiped his hands on a cloth and glanced toward the vents, where the faint shimmer still lingered. The children noticed movement, but when they blinked, it was gone. Every small action, the perfect alignment of circuits, the delicate adjustment of wires, was done without Jaren touching them. The children began to realize that the humans' elves were real, though invisible, and that they worked not because they had to, but because they wanted to help. The station supervisors arrived a short while later, checking on the repairs. Scanners swept the hangar, detecting no unauthorized life forms, no drones, no extra crew. Yet the repairs were flawless, done faster than any team could manage. The children watched silently as the adults scratched their heads in confusion. Jaren spoke to the supervisors calmly. "Everything is fine. The repairs are complete." He didn't mention the helpers. It was not his secret to share. The elves, if the children insisted on calling them that, preferred to remain unseen. They were not pets, nor were they bound to obey. They worked where and when they chose. Humans had learned long ago that some beings preferred to move in silence, guiding without claiming credit. The children followed Jaren around the hangar, whispering and pointing at tiny sparks of light that flickered at the edges of their vision. "There. Did you see that?" one exclaimed. Another leaned closer, only to have the light vanish. They were filled with questions, curiosity mixing with awe and confusion. The elves moved like whispers, so quick that the children could barely comprehend them. "You really think these things are alive?" one child asked. "Yes," the other replied softly. "They must be. Machines don't choose to help. Machines don't hide." Jaren continued his work, aware of the children's eyes but not disturbed. He had always treated his helpers with care, leaving small portions of food, warm spaces, and even quiet music in areas the children could not reach. Respect was the only way to earn the trust of beings that chose freedom over obedience. Every motion of the elves was voluntary, guided by trust and kindness, not fear. The children stayed until the end of the shift, watching in silence as the final panels slid perfectly into place. A faint shimmer passed along the ceiling vent, like a wave of light, and for a brief moment, the children swore they saw tiny hands adjusting a loose wire. Then it was gone. The hangar was quiet again, alive only with the hum of the ships. One of the children finally spoke, almost in a whisper. "Maybe humans do have elves. Maybe we were wrong to laugh." "Yes," the other agreed, eyes wide. "And maybe they work because humans treat them well. They choose to help because they trust him." Jaren glanced at the children, a soft smile on his face. He said nothing. The truth was simple. Kindness created cooperation and respect created loyalty. In a galaxy full of power, speed, and technology, small acts of care could produce wonders invisible to those who only looked at what they could see. The children floated away slowly, their minds buzzing with ideas and questions they could not yet answer. Laughter returned to the hangar, but a sense of wonder lingered in their hearts. They had witnessed something extraordinary, the unseen helpers of a human mechanic, quiet and voluntary, working with intelligence, grace, and trust. And in the hidden corners of the hangar, tiny lights shimmered as the elves moved silently, ensuring that everything was perfect. They had no name for the children's species and they needed none. They worked not for fame or fear, but because the human mechanic had given them respect, and in return, they had become a part of something greater than anyone could see. The children whispered one last time as they left. Humans, maybe they know more than we think. And Jaren smiled quietly, returning to his work, surrounded by helpers no one else would ever see. The space station hummed with its usual rhythm, but something felt different that day. A low vibration ran through the metal floors, soft at first, then growing stronger. Lights flickered and panels buzzed with warnings. Ships docked in the hangar began to lose power in small surges, alarms echoing faintly across the decks. Jaren felt a chill run down his spine, not from fear, but from knowing that this was not a simple glitch. The alien children who had been observing him returned, curious as ever. They hovered near the railings, whispering nervously to each other. "What's happening?" one asked. "The lights, they're flickering too fast." "It's not a joke," said the other, eyes wide. "Something is wrong." Jaren moved quickly but calmly, his hands steady as he approached the central control panel. He could feel the station system struggling to stabilize. Normally, repairs like this would take a team of engineers, but Jaren did not panic. He trusted his helpers, the small, unseen beings who moved in silence and worked by choice. They had helped him many times before, quietly adjusting delicate circuits and guiding floating tools. Today their assistance would be needed more than ever. The first warning sirens shrieked loudly. Some of the alien crew scrambled to respond, but confusion and fear slowed them down. Jaren stepped into the maintenance corridor, sealing the doors behind him to prevent a power surge from spreading. His hands moved over the panels, but even as he worked, tiny lights flickered in the corners of his eyes. The elves, as the children had begun to call them, were already at work. They darted along the wires and panels, invisible to scanners and human eyes unless you looked closely, and even then their speed made them almost impossible to see. The children leaned over the railings, holding their breath. "There. Did you see that?" one whispered. A tiny shadow zipped along a cable, adjusting a panel as if it were part of the station itself. The other child shook its head. It's impossible. Machines can't move like that. Humans don't have this technology." Jaren worked silently, guiding tools floating into his hands and wires aligning perfectly without contact. The elves adjusted the energy conduits, smoothing out surges and stabilizing failing circuits. The alarms were blaring, the lights flickering, but slowly the system began to respond. Energy readings leveled off, warning lights dimmed, and the station's hum returned to normal. One of the alien children gasped. They're fixing it. But how? No one could do this. The other nodded, unable to speak. Tiny flashes of light moved along the walls, sometimes too fast to follow, sometimes lingering just long enough for a glimpse. The children realized that what they had laughed at before, the elves, were real and they were alive. They moved by choice, working alongside the human mechanic, invisible but essential. Station supervisors arrived moments later, rushing toward the source of the alarm. Scanners detected no extra life forms, no unauthorized devices. Yet the repairs were complete. Panels were perfectly aligned, circuits adjusted, and energy systems stable. Everyone looked around in confusion, trying to understand what had happened. Jaren wiped his hands on a cloth and glanced at the vents where tiny shimmers of light still lingered. The children watched him wide-eyed. I think we were wrong," one whispered. "There really are elves." "Yes," the other said softly. "And they help because humans are kind to them. They choose to help because they trust him." Jaren moved to the next section of the corridor, checking minor systems to ensure stability. The elves continued their work, silently assisting without recognition or reward. They were not his tools, they were his partners, moving only where and when they chose. The children followed him at a distance, trying to catch another glimpse. Tiny hands adjusted screws in narrow vents, floating lights nudged panels into place, and whispers of movement carried through the air. Each action was precise, intelligent, and voluntary. The children were mesmerized, realizing that the elves were more than myths. They were living beings capable of understanding, choosing, and working together. One of the children spoke again in a voice almost too quiet to hear. Humans, maybe they know more than we think. They respect life, even things no one else sees. Jaren smiled faintly, not turning toward them. He had learned long ago that respect and kindness created loyalty stronger than fear or force. His helpers worked because they trusted him, and that trust was the foundation of everything he had accomplished. Even in a galaxy full of advanced technology and logic, small acts of care could create extraordinary results. By the time the alarms had fully stopped, the station was calm again. Ships resumed normal operations, lights glowed steadily, and the hum of machinery returned to its usual rhythm. The children floated away slowly, their minds buzzing with wonder and disbelief. They had witnessed something rare and incredible, the unseen helpers of a human mechanic, moving with intelligence, grace, and choice, restoring order when chaos threatened. And somewhere in the shadows the elves moved silently, unseen by most, ensuring that every system remained stable. They had no name for the children, no need for recognition, and no desire for reward. They worked because kindness had earned their trust, and in that small act of faith humanity had proven once again that it could inspire loyalty, cooperation, and even wonder, in ways the galaxy had long forgotten. The children whispered one last time as they left the hangar. We were wrong. Humans really do know things others cannot see. Jaren returned to his work, tools floating into place, calm and confident, surrounded by helpers no one else would ever notice. The space station had returned to its normal rhythm, but the events of the day had left ripples through the hangar. Alien children whispered in corners, their eyes wide with questions. The unseen helpers, the elves as the children called them, continued their quiet work, moving along vents, wires, and narrow panels where no human or machine could reach. Jaren moved calmly among the ships, checking small systems and smoothing out minor energy fluctuations. The supervisors had left, satisfied that the repairs were complete, though none of them understood how it had happened. No sensors had detected the elves, no records showed drones or extra crew. Yet the work was done. Perfectly. The children watched him from a distance, floating near the railings. How is he doing it? One whispered. There's no way humans can repair this so fast. Jaren paused and looked toward the faint shimmer of movement in the vents. He smiled softly, though the children could not see the depth of his thoughts. He had never claimed the elves were real. He never had to. To him they were companions, partners, beings with their own choice and will. He knew that trust could not be forced, and that respect was earned through kindness, not command. The children leaned closer, noticing tiny sparks of light moving along panels. Maybe humans know more than we thought, one whispered. Maybe these elves are real, because humans never said they weren't. Yes, said the other, voice trembling with wonder. And they help, because humans treat them kindly. Jaren began explaining to the children, speaking quietly so that only they could hear. Humans never denied the elves exist, he said. We simply respect their choice to remain hidden. They work with us, not for us. They are not our tools or our servants. They choose to help because trust and kindness are stronger than control. That is something humans have learned over time. Respect and care can create cooperation that no machine, no command, and no force could ever achieve. The children listened carefully, amazed by the simplicity and truth of his words. They had spent their lives in a galaxy that valued strength, speed, and technology above all else. Humans, by contrast, had something older, something quieter, but just as powerful: understanding, patience, and compassion. A faint shimmer passed across a maintenance panel, and the children caught a glimpse of small hands adjusting a wire, aligning circuits with gentle precision. So, they are alive? One asked. Yes, Jaren replied. They are alive. And they choose to help us because they trust us. You cannot force that. You cannot buy it or demand it. You can only earn it. The children stared, realizing for the first time that this was not magic or illusion. These small beings were intelligent, voluntary, and real. They had thought it was a story, a myth, a joke. Now they understood the truth. Humans had created conditions where unseen beings could work freely and safely. That trust had allowed incredible things to happen, things that no technology or weapon could replicate. One of the children floated closer. So, humans don't need elves to be clever. But they do know how to earn loyalty. And that's why the elves help them. Jaren nodded. Exactly. Humans can build machines and we can master technology, but our greatest strength has always been our ability to care, to respect, and to inspire cooperation. These elves, They show us that when beings work together willingly, without fear or force, even the impossible becomes possible. The children watched the elves again, noticing how they moved silently along the edges of the hangar, adjusting tiny panels, clearing dust and stabilizing systems too delicate for anyone else to handle. Every movement was precise, intelligent, and deliberate. No one outside of Jaren's knowledge had ever seen this, and yet the work was real. Humans, maybe they are different from other species, one child whispered. Not stronger, not faster, but, somehow, better. They understand things others forget. Yes, said the other. They create trust, and that trust makes miracles happen. Jaren smiled quietly, continuing his work. He left small portions of food, music, and warmth in the corners where the elves moved. He did not control them. He did not demand obedience. He gave respect, and in return the elves chose to help. It was a simple truth, but one that the galaxy often overlooked. Kindness could achieve what force never could. The children floated away slowly, their minds buzzing with ideas. They had seen the elves, heard the stories, and understood a truth that no scanner, no report, and no calculation could ever measure. Humans had a power unlike any other, the power to inspire trust and cooperation, to create allies where others only saw fear. In the shadows of the hangar, the elves moved silently, unseen but present. They had no names for the alien children, no desire for recognition, no need for reward. They worked because kindness had earned their trust, and in that simple choice humanity's true strength was revealed. As the hangar returned to its usual rhythm, the children whispered one last time. Humans, they really do know things we cannot see. And maybe, that makes them the strongest of all. Jaren continued to work, calm and confident, tools floating gently in his hands, surrounded by helpers no one else would ever notice. The hangar was quiet again, alive only with soft hums and gentle lights, yet in that quiet, a lesson for the galaxy had been quietly taught. Respect, trust, and kindness could accomplish what power alone never could. The hangar was calm, bathed in the soft glow of overhead lights. Ships floated quietly in their docks, and the hum of machinery filled the air. Jaren moved among the panels, tools floating gently in his hands, checking energy systems and minor repairs. Everything was stable now, but the events of the last few days had left a lasting impression. The alien children returned, eager to witness what they had only glimpsed before. They hovered near the railings, whispering excitedly. "Do you think we'll see them again?" one asked. "I hope so," said the other. "I want to know for sure that the elves are real." Jaren smiled quietly as he worked. He did not need to show them everything. The elves, small, unseen helpers, were not toys or illusions. They moved because they chose to, assisting where humans alone could not. Their work was delicate, precise, and voluntary, and it had saved the station from serious malfunctions before. Suddenly, a minor surge rippled through the hangar. Panels flickered for a moment and the children gasped. But the elves were already in motion. Tiny lights shimmered across the walls and ceilings, darting along cables and vents. Panels realigned, wires corrected, and circuits stabilized, all before anyone could reach them. The children watched in awe, finally understanding what they had suspected all along. "They're real," one whispered, voice trembling. "They're alive and they help because humans treat them well." "Yes," said the other. "They trust him. And that trust makes everything possible." Jaren moved calmly, checking each section of the hangar as the elves worked in silence. He did not call attention to them, did not demand recognition. They did not need it. Their presence was proof enough of a bond that went beyond words. The children floated closer, their curiosity mixing with respect. One of the children pointed toward a tiny shimmer near the ceiling. "Look, they're adjusting that panel, without touching it." "How can they do that?" Jaren chuckled softly. "They work because we give them respect. They choose to help because we show care. Humans have learned over centuries that cooperation is stronger than control, and kindness can create allies where fear cannot. The elves are one example, but the lesson is bigger than that. Every being has value and every choice matters." The children listened carefully. They had grown up in a galaxy that valued strength, speed, and technology above all else. Humans had shown them something different: patience, trust, and understanding. These qualities could create results more powerful than weapons, faster than machines, and more enduring than fear. A faint glow passed along a narrow vent, and the children caught a glimpse of small hands adjusting delicate wiring. "They're not just helpers," one whispered. "They're partners. They work with him because he treats them right." "Yes," said the other. "And humans, maybe that's why they can achieve things no one else can. Not because of strength, not because of machines, but because of trust and care. Jaren continued his work, tools floating in perfect alignment. The elves moved silently, unseen by most, stabilizing systems, organizing small areas and correcting minor errors. Their work was complete, flawless and voluntary. The children could only watch, slowly understanding that the human strength lay not in force or technology alone, but in respect and cooperation. Humans really do know more than we think, one whispered to the other. They understand things the galaxy forgot. Yes, said the other, voice full of wonder. They inspire trust, and trust makes miracles happen. The children lingered, watching as the elves disappeared into shadows, moving quietly along hidden paths, leaving no trace but perfectly aligned panels and stabilized circuits. They realized that humans had created something extraordinary, an environment where unseen beings could choose to help, where trust was more powerful than fear, and where kindness could create results no scanner or report could measure. The children floated away slowly, minds buzzing with thoughts and questions they could not yet answer. They had witnessed something rare, a human mechanic working with helpers no one else would ever see, creating order and harmony where others only saw chaos. They had learned that power was not always about strength or technology, but about understanding, patience, and respect. Jaren returned to his work, calm and confident, tools moving as if by magic. The elves had vanished into hidden corners, their work complete. They needed no reward, no recognition, no fame. They moved because trust had earned their loyalty, and that choice reflected humanity's greatest strength. The children whispered one last time as they left the hangar. Humans, they really are different. Not just clever but better. They know how to inspire, and that makes them strong in ways we never imagined. Jaren smiled quietly, watching them go. The hangar was alive with quiet energy, but a new kind of belief lingered in the air. The galaxy had witnessed a small miracle, not of power, not of technology, but of trust, kindness, and cooperation. And in that quiet moment, humanity's strength was clear. They could inspire loyalty, create wonders, and change minds, not through fear or control, but through respect and care. The elves moved silently in the shadows, unseen by most, but always present. They had chosen to help, and in their choice, humanity's true power was revealed. The hangar hummed peacefully, the ships glowed softly, and Jaren continued his work, surrounded by the helpers no one else could see. And somewhere in the quiet lights and hidden vents, the children understood the most important lesson of all. Belief could exist in the unseen, and kindness could create wonders the galaxy had forgotten. Humans had proven it, silently, simply, and perfectly.